Tick-tock, time to rock. How's everyone doing? As we're all avoiding coronavirus, I am here right now with Sean Hurst of Mixed Martial Apologetics and Believing Thinkers, a man who currently has coronavirus. And so, I'm just trying to be safe. We're all trying to be safe. I don't want to catch it from Sean, so, Sean, I'm sure you're an expert by now, but just for everyone who's watching, can we catch coronavirus from you through the internet?
Maybe. No, I'm just kidding. No, absolutely not.
No, we can't? Are you sure? Because
no.
Hang on. I keep hearing, if we can't, then how come I keep hearing about all these computer viruses? Huh? Care to explain that one?
I can't. I'm at a loss.
Busted. All right, but you're sure we can't catch it?
I'm pretty sure, but as a philosophy student, I can't be certain. I can only have a reasonable degree.
All right, well that's good because this is harder. This is harder to breathe in than it looks.
But you should do the Vader voice before you take that off.
Oh yeah, I wonder if it sounds like it's easier in a cup. But check this out. Check this out. Now, Sean Hurst, you have underestimated the power of coronavirus. All right, that's about all I can do. All right, let me get geared up here.
That could be Vader on a ventilator.
All right, that's better.
That could be Vader on a ventilator.
All right, so we don't need to worry about catching this over the internet. All right. All right, so everyone, we're here with Sean Hurst of Mixed Martial Apologetics. If you remember back, when was that? Beginning of February, when we were getting together a bunch of YouTubers down in South Carolina. Sean was one of the guys who was gathering together, and we were sharing tips and strategies and so on. But he's a little bit. His channel's pretty new. His channel, Mixed Martial Apologetics, is new, and so the link to that channel and to another channel, Believing Thinkers, is in the description box. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. We want to get a little bit of his background. So, want to hear from Sean, find out, how he got into all of this and so on, and then we'll want to talk about coronavirus because, if you've got coronavirus, then a lot of people are going to want to know what it's like, how the testing works, all that stuff. And believe it or not, Sean, there are still, I guess you could call them coronavirus skeptics out there who think it's all an act because the government is using it to seize authority over us and take everyone's guns and stuff. You heard this kind of stuff?
No, not yet.
Oh, I hear it all the time. I hear.
Oh no!
In fact, I used you as an example the other day when someone was going, "Come on, does anyone really know a person who has coronavirus?
Yep.
Does anyone actually know someone?" Was like, "Yep, I do. Yep."
I've got the video I was telling you the other day.
Yeah. So Sean's got it. All right, Sean. Well, we'll Cheryl Cheryl R said, "Where in the world did Dave get that gas mask?" Well, Cheryl, my oldest son Luke and I have a similar sense of humor, and when everyone started going around wearing the little paper masks in his school, it's before school got canceled. But in the weeks leading up to school getting canceled, students and teachers walking around with the masks on. He's like, can we get a gas mask so I can go in there and kind of he's kind of making fun of everyone, right? But anyway, I was like, oh, that's a good idea. That's actually funny. So we had to work out a little deal because it's a real gas mask and they're fairly expensive. But that's how I ended up with that thing. So that's my son Luke's. All right, so we'll probably go about an hour, and we'll take comments and questions along the way, especially questions about coronavirus and so on when we get to that. But Sean, why don't you tell us? Share your background for us. Everyone needs to get to know who you are.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. So, Basically, I think a good place to start is where I did when I got saved, about 1994, 95. Shortly thereafter, I got called into the ministry to preach and to be a pastor. So about 96, I started my formal education in theology, and I was very fortunate. The church I was at had a small Bible institute, so not only was I able to study there, but I could intern, do a ton of research. I got to do all kinds of stuff there at the church, unfortunately, including, funerals and stuff like that, but it gave me a tremendous amount of life experience. After about 2 years of that, I really felt like I had a deficit, so I ended up going off to Bible college, which wasn't a bad thing in terms of what I learned, but I really wish I hadn't done it because of all the experience I missed out on if I had stayed where I was at. What I realized was I was actually getting a better education there due to the fact that I was being groomed, such a small class. I was helping out in so many different ways. But fortunately, when I got to the Bible college, which was Trinity Baptist in Jacksonville, Florida, my first semester there, I got hired on as the researcher for the senior pastor, Tom Messer. Now, Trinity's what I would call a mega church. I don't remember what the size was at the time, maybe 6,000, 7,000 people. We were running 50 buses on a Sunday to go pick up kids for Sunday school. And so I was sort of the big man on campus in college. Mm-hmm. Tells you how nerdy I am, right? People are like, "Oh, it's Pastor Messer's researcher." yeah, man, watch out. Better hold that door open for me.
That does sound pretty nerdy.
Yeah.
I'm hoping you will eventually get to some information that makes us change our perspective of your total utter nerdiness. But go ahead and continue.
So. Then after that, 9/11 hits, and I'm in my 3.5 years in to college at this point, about to finish this degree, and unfortunately, I had 2 years of law while I was over at that church I was studying at too. Those were non-accredited courses, so when I switched over to Trinity, accredited courses, they didn't mesh, so I had to redo all the theology stuff. My law courses were accredited. That'll be pertinent later on. So from there, I signed up literally September 12th, 2001. I'm in the recruiter's office. Erica and I, my wife and I, had just gotten married in July of that year. So she went from being married to a pastor to being married to a soldier in a few months. From that point, I actually left for basic in, I want to say it was January of 2002, because they had so many people signing up, they literally couldn't get us in to do the training quick enough. I graduated from all of my schools around May, ended up at Fort Drum 10th Mountain Division in roughly June of 2002. From there, deployed all over the world, predominantly Afghanistan, Iraq, did stuff, all combat missions. I've had almost 400 combat missions over the years, lost friends, of course.
Say that part again.
Almost 400 combat missions.
400 combat missions?
Yes, sir. Yep.
All right. Well, you're still here. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
All right.
I've crashed in a helicopter in a minefield that was shot. That we were taking small arms fire. We think that's what blew out the transmission of this helicopter, and the pilot. It started going down. So I'm praying, and I'm just going, dear Lord God, if I'm Jonah and this is the whale moment, please don't kill the rest of these men. I don't ever make deals with God, but I felt like that was something where I just didn't want others to suffer because I wasn't living right. And the pilot set it down in a minefield. He didn't just gracefully set it down. We hit and slid for about 150 meters.
Wow.
There's a lot that could go wrong.
Yeah.
Got off the helicopter, tried to dig fighting positions, which is standard procedure, at which point the pickaxe on the helicopter broke. We were trying to use bayonets, anything we could to dig into this ground because we knew we had personnel approaching. And so we're breaking tools and stuff. At the time, we get a call over the radio saying, basically stop digging. Do you hear us? Mm-hmm. So we reply back, yes. What's going on? They said, you crash landed in a NATO templated minefield. We didn't realize it because typically in Afghanistan, what they'll do is they'll take rocks, they'll paint them white, spray paint them, and put them over where the mines are. And they just stay there. They're just all over the place. Well, we didn't see any of that because when we crash landed, of course, it just scattered everything. Mm-hmm. And so thankfully the ground was so hard, we couldn't really get anything dug. So we had to stay overnight. It was pretty cool. The French show up in an amphibious vehicle. Is the most bizarre thing. And they're trying to throw us beers, David. Of all the supplies we need beers. And we've got to use none of us spoke French, so we had to use their Slavic translator who spoke Russian, and one of our guys spoke Polish, and so we were able to communicate that way. But these morons are throwing us beers. We're like, no, stop. But they were super cool. They pulled security around us all night. Anyway, tons of missions after that. Capture lots of high-value targets. That's one of the main missions we did. Which high-value targets are just bad guys that are up on the the most wanted list, so to speak. So we're rolling these guys up left and right. I get hurt though repeatedly. Lost hearing in one ear. I've got fractures in my hand. So they said, yeah, you know what? You can ride a desk or we can retire you. And I was like, I'm not riding a desk after doing all this. So that was a great time for me to get out. Went back to school. Continued on in, I think, '08. Was ordained as a senior pastor, and then became a senior pastor shortly after. In about 2 years ago, sorry about the dog. He'll quit. The kids will put him up.
That's what dogs are for.
Yeah, he's a big one too, so he's super loud. So about 2 years ago, all my injuries started catching up with me, David, and so my wife and I were really wanting to do something in ministry still, but I couldn't work in a pulpit anymore. I was starting to do interim pastoring where I would fill in for guys who were on vacation or for churches who were searching for pastors. And so we decided to do online ministry, but it took us a while to get started because we weren't really sure, if that makes sense, what to do. And it sort of dawned on me one day in frustration of noticing that a lot of people weren't really comprehending, like for instance the Kalam, they couldn't, it wasn't the shell of it, whatever begins to exist has a cause, the universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause, we'll just do it that way, simpliciter. But it was because they didn't understand how it could be evidential because it had underlying evidence to support each of those premises. Like Craig's had, 2 philosophical arguments and 2 sets of data for evidence scientific. So they weren't understanding these basic concepts of evidence. And so I realized, okay, I think this is it, because I really felt a passion to teach people, whether it's basic philosophy, particularly epistemology, and how that really goes into everything we're doing in apologetics and whatnot. And then when we met, I got to give you credit. Mixed Martial Apologetics was your brainchild. And so from there, I don't know how many, David was so awesomely patient with me. I'd say, what was the name of that again? And he'd say, Mixed Martial Apologetics. Like half an hour later, I'm like, what was it again?
But by the way, no one ever has to give me credit. I am a nonstop fire hydrant of awesome ideas that just come pouring out of me all day.
Yep, he is, seriously, and that's just not just coming from me. John over at What Do You Mean was saying that about David, so he's like, man, the guy's got these incredible ideas. So anyway, we ran with it, and we've been doing videos on there. Now I stopped within the last few weeks because I've been sick with this, what I call the vid instead of the HIV, it's the vid, and so it's been miserable.
Now, The reason I suggested Mixed Martial Apologetics was because you were talking about these 2 different things. You had a pretty successful martial arts channel before all of this, right?
Yep.
So what's your background in martial arts?
That's a great question. So I started at the age of 6 in 1981. So I'll tell you guys, you can do the math, how old I am. And I started in judo originally. We moved up from South Florida when I was about 12, and so I had to switch to karate, so Okinawan Shorin-ryu, and pretty much for most of my life I'd been training in some sort of martial art. When I went off to college, Trinity, up in Jacksonville, I started under a man by the name of Lee Peacock, was also Christian, great guy, in Jun Fan Gung Fu, which is Bruce Lee's art. And so, of course, Sam Shamoon and I were talking about that the other day. He was, yeah. So, and I've trained under Dan Inosanto for a number of years now, not directly. My teacher, Lee Peacock, and others are directly certified under Guru Inosanto, and then I go and travel when he's doing seminars and stuff in the past.
Hey, little side note. I think it was Danny Inosanto. I think it was Danny Inosanto who said he was asked how Bruce Lee would do against Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he said, in a street fight, he goes, I hope they like to practice their jiu-jitsu in Braille.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yep. I got it.
yeah. So he said if it was a street fight, he said the first thing he's going to do is he said Bruce's favorite moves were eye gouge and then stomp and then smash the arch of your foot. He said he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that in the movies, but what Bruce would actually do in a fight. And I'm kind of thinking, because you kind of think, once MMA came along and then people started taking the best out of these different martial arts, the sort of one-dimensional style was kind of obsolete. And so I'm thinking, a modern MMA fighter, I think is just going to, eat someone alive from 20 or 30 years ago, which is what we saw when the UFC started. But at the same time, I'm thinking, if you're quick enough with an eye gouge and a foot stomp, that's ball game. That's just, it doesn't matter.
So full disclosure, I've got a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Well, I've got a second degree in Japanese jiu-jitsu, but I've also got Brazilian jiu-jitsu certifications, combat submission wrestling under Eric Paulson. Because the school I went to it was like a buffet they had all these different instructors. So I'd go in on my lunch breaks. I was a manager at a Chick-fil-A while going to school, and I'd hot-footed over there during my lunch break and go train for an hour every night. And so it was whatever class was there is what I jumped into most of the time. And I've been doing that now, those different disciplines for the last, that was 98, 99, so 21, 22 years. And so I've been teaching for about 10 years, give or take now, and I had a channel, Tribe K, and several schools, and we wanted to actually use that as a ministry. In fact, at Trinity, I went back and was teaching as outreach what we called asymmetrical spiritual warfare. So think special forces spiritual warfare kind of thing. And the idea was using sports, different things as an outreach tool. And so we started out with martial arts and soccer, and we were bringing people onto the church campus because it's 168 acres. And we were using all these different facilities and whatnot to get people onto the campus. And then just trying to, sort of get in their lives, form relationships. And I actually taught a class of college students how to do this sort of stuff and to focus on people and relationships because we used to do it the old school way. We'd knock on doors. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just we were trying different things. So, and that's where I started to really blend. That was back in 2007, I think, as a ministry. And then from there, I did that for several years until, again, about the same time I had to step down from the pulpit was about the time, like 2016-ish. From that might have been a little sooner because my body just can't handle it from all my injuries. So. All
right. Well, we want to get to coronavirus here in a second. I did want to just clarify for everyone the difference between your channels. People might need to refresh the page because I added a link after we started, so they might need to refresh their page. But let me just respond to two quick comments real quick, and I'll try and intersperse some comments as we go.
Sure.
Samson Rye said, David, how is your brother doing? That is the great mystery, Samson, because they're not... Manny can't exactly communicate very well and doesn't really have outside contact, but they don't want people coming and visiting him, so it's kind of a mystery until we're allowed in there because of the coronavirus. I was planning on making the trek there once or twice a month, and just haven't seen him since the last video I posted. Fortunately, my other brother John lives closer, so. Marie contacted him earlier and just said, "Hey, do whatever you can to find out from whoever's there what's going on." And then Niles Guy said, "Like the dark background, David. This is not my real background. This was recorded the video that I posted right before this started, and given the time of day, the sun was beaming right through the window, so I covered it up with a black backdrop to cover up the sun. So." If you like it, then, love it while it lasts because it's not going to be here. All right, so your two channels. Go ahead and tell everyone about your two channels real quick, and then we're going to have a little talk about the coronavirus.
Nice. Thank you. So the first channel, Believing Thinkers, which is the first one we started, is predominantly it is apologetic, but it's predominantly a teaching ministry, and it's going to focus on both philosophy of religion and philosophical theology. Now, for those that aren't sure what the difference is between the two, or at least how I use them, is that typically with philosophy of religion, you're going to see a lot of the arguments for God. And so that's something we're getting into very soon on that channel. We've sort of been setting up for that with some basics of logic and philosophy so that people, if they don't understand that, when we get into it on the channel, we can just point back to the other videos. And that was something we wanted to do because I noticed a lot of people weren't understanding arguments for God because they didn't understand why a deductively sound argument, why the conclusion must be true, or just some basic parameters. Then philosophical theology side is literally we'll be approaching theology with a philosophical standpoint or leaning, and talking about divine aseity, talking about all kinds of different topics in terms of attributes of God, things like that. In addition, probably some more epistemology stuff. And then, because that's sort of my what I'm trying to specialize in, I'm going back to school for another master's. I'm working in philosophy on this one at Dr. Hunter's college. And so, and then the other channel, Mixed Martial Apologetics, is goofy, fun, apologetic. It's just straight apologetic. And it is, I mean, it's silly, bro. When you see it, you're going to, if you like goofy, silly, it's predominantly geared towards guys. So the difference between the two is one is very astute, if you will, and academic, and the other is very goofy. And so you may not like, if you like one, you may not like the other, unless you're like me.
Yeah, I was actually, I've never actually watched an episode of whatever it is, America's Got Talent or whatever, but I've watched YouTube clips, and one of the YouTube clips were they had two male judges and two female judges, and the act was a kind of martial arts spoof, martial arts comedy show where this guy's, he's got his assistant and stuff like that, and they're running through training and just acting like complete idiots. And Howard Stern and that British dude Simon were cracking up, dying, and the ladies were just going, and they gave the buzzer. They're like, no, get out of here, right? And Howard Stern gave it like the golden buzzer award, where they automatically go through because he thought it was that funny. And so there's different senses of humor out there.
Exactly like that. That's exactly who it was geared towards. So yeah, that's the idea.
All right, and so the links to those two channels are again in the description box. You might need to refresh your page because I added the second link as we're kind of starting. All right, well, we wanted to get to coronavirus. By the way, Warrior Poet Society showed up. I don't know if you guys know Warrior Poet Society, but he's got one of those gun channels, where every video is right. And so that's what he does on his channel. But it's good because a lot of people like those kinds of channels. So I mean, anyone could do it. Anyone could just get some guns and go, I'm gonna shoot a bunch of stuff and get a million views. But has a very, very popular YouTube channel. Got a couple 100,000 more subscribers than I do. So that just shows you what people are like, right? You can sit here like me and calmly state facts and give evidence, or you can just run around with guns, guns blazing, and people love it. So just keep that in mind. You know Warrior Poet Society?
I don't, but I wrote it down.
Oh yeah.
So I'm gonna. Yeah,
no, you want to check that out. You guys have similar backgrounds and stuff. So you want to check that out. All right, so coronavirus. Look, we even have some of the. I'm just randomly scrolling through, and let me see. Thomas Watkins here. I believe the coronavirus is the biggest fraud that has ever been played on the American people. 7 billion people on Earth, 1 million have the virus, 50,000 deaths. BS. And I've seen multiple comments claiming that this is just a sort of scam, which is funny because I mentioned that. As we're starting, that there are people who think it's all a hoax. Likewise, there are people who, after every mass shooting, where dozens of people die, they come out and say, nope, they're all actors, they're all paid actors. This is a stunt by the government to seize everyone's guns. And J. Warner Wallace, interestingly, he when he talks about, so J. Warner Wallace was a detective and a cold case detective, and he talks about cracking people during interrogations and stuff. And he said that the more people you have in a conspiracy, the more quickly it breaks down. So the only ones that really last are the ones that are like 2 or 3 people who are just completely loyal to each other, like brothers who grew up all their lives and would never snitch on the other and so on. He said, other than that, they usually break down under the correct interrogation. And he said the bigger they get, the more quickly they break down. In other words, if you have 10, 15, he says they're always the guys in there who will break more quickly than others. Which is why it's so ridiculous when you start thinking about, if 9/11's this massive conspiracy and all these shootings, all these. I mean, think the Sandy Hook massacre and stuff like that. All these parents who are in the news, these are all actors, and I mean, keep in mind, all the students in that school, unless you think the whole school was made up, then there are students in that school. And if you start walking around saying, oh, all these kids are massacred and no one knows, what? Those kids don't even exist. If you're making all of this up, it becomes, this has to be a massive, massive, massive conspiracy. And if you're talking coronavirus and you think that all these people who are sick and dying, and I just watched a CNN interview with a nurse in the emergency room in New York. She was saying this is the worst thing I've ever seen. As fast as we're opening up new ICUs, we get more people in there. They all have to be ventilated, and she said this is the worst. This is by far the worst thing she's ever seen in her 20 years as a nurse. And you'll have guys come along. Nope, big conspiracy. It's all a conspiracy. And so, guys, if this is, my goodness, how many millions of people do you think do nothing but conspiracies all day? Weird stuff. Yeah. But fortunately, we have a part of the conspiracy right here. We have Sean, who's involved in this conspiracy, trying to convince us that there is such a thing as coronavirus, and he's here. And now we know, thanks to the gentleman in the chat, that Sean is an agent. Is an agent who's masquerading as a Christian, speaker and apologist and so on, and he's actually part of the conspiracy, coming in here to try and convince us.
We should have blacked out my face so that you can't see it.
Yeah. I can blur it out. I can blur it out later. You got all right. Well, conspiracy theories aside, although I'll probably come back to those. Go ahead and tell us. So when did you get did you get tested first, or you started like feeling sick or something and then wanted to know?
No, I started feeling sick first. Now, full disclosure, when I was in the Army, I had not only combat lifesavers, advanced combat lifesavers. I then went on to do a trauma triage course and whatnot, even though I wasn't a medic, and that's because of the amount of combat. So I've got a fair amount of medical training. Mm-hmm. So I won't get into everything, but because of that, I grew up with a mother as a nurse, healthcare, lots of friends that work in it, pretty good understanding of how sicknesses work. And so we actually isolated ourselves before this. When we got back in February from the event, I was the only moron on an airplane at the time wearing an N95 mask. So we started isolating ourselves. And I won't get into how and we're able to do all this, but we've been ordering groceries and stuff. So I know that's how it came through into the house. Because by this time, groceries or the person who was making the delivery. And it was a very brief, think about that. It's a very brief contact. Because they were literally just bringing the bags up. We're bringing them in. It could have been somebody who stocked the stuff. It could have been any number of ways, but we know that that's how it got into the house. Because prior to me being sick, it had been almost a month we had been isolated at home. And we did that partly because we also homeschool our children. And so because of that, we tend to, if we go to my brother's house for a holiday, we always get sick, inevitably, because our kids don't have the same immunity because they're not in public school. So that being said, about 2 weeks ago, I started feeling feverish. And it was pretty normal. And I had this terrible headache right between the eyes. Now I take pain medicine for my back. So I know when that's not cutting it, it's bad. So at any rate, I went ahead and took some Tylenol, and that seemed to manage it a little bit, but the fever felt different. And that makes sense when you think back on it, because the reason it's the novel coronavirus is humans haven't had this yet.
So you've been sick before, and you're saying this was a different kind of feeling than you had experienced before.
Yes, I've had I've had not bronchitis, but pneumonia twice. And this is similar to that. And so but not in the way it felt. And so from the fever and that, it was typically just sort of flu-like symptoms, but I was suspicious because of all this going on, but I still waited to get tested until the tightness in the chest. That I have not felt the same way when I had pneumonia. I had different respiratory issues, but this was wholly different. It was like somebody had, compressing my chest just sitting on here laughing with you now, my sternum, I can feel a little bit of that tightness here again. And the coughing a little bit, but for me anyway, that could be due to medication. I don't know why I didn't have as much of that. So I did first a face-to-face consult, actually through Skype with a doctor, because they don't want you coming in if you are sick and infecting people. They want to first sort of weed you out. And they said, yeah, we're pretty confident you have it. And so at that point, based on all the symptoms, and I get into how I know I can do my blood pressure here at the house due to my medical training. Got thermometers, the works. So at any rate, he was pretty confident. And then I said, well, I feel like I still need to get tested. So I started isolating myself down in my office. I've been living in here for the last 2 weeks. I've barely left. If I went into because my wife's pregnant and I don't want to make her sick. And we've got a 2-year-old too, which worries me, although it seems that young children aren't getting this right now. So thankfully, that's the case. But 2 of my daughters were pretty sure have it. At that point, I didn't bother having them tested. I went ahead and got tested, and yeah, you've got it. All right, fine. So I just been sleeping on an air mattress here in the office and isolating myself. I also there's a diffuser. It's an alcohol lamp, which actually will emit burning alcohol into the air, which is great for sterilizing the air. They used to use them in hospital ERs long time ago. So I use that HEPA filter in here to sort of isolate, if that makes sense, anything in the office, any germs that are in here, so it's not spreading. And so far that's worked. If I leave the room, I wear an N95 mask, and then I also wash with Hibiclens, which I'm not sure if your viewers are familiar with. When SARS was popular and when the flu comes around every year, sometimes people will run out and stock up on that. Think of Hibiclens like a hospital-grade antiseptic that works on your skin for like 12 hours, killing germs. So that helps. And so far, I haven't contaminated anyone else in the house. I think the girls got it, unfortunately, before I realized I was sick. So, but the pain in the chest, the respiratory issue was the one that terrified me, because I woke up one night, I think I told you this before, gasping for air. And that scared me to death. That was thankfully the worst of it. And so from then, that was the high point of how bad it was. And from there, thankfully, the next morning I told myself, if this gets any worse, that's it, I'm in the ER. Because I'm 45, so I was a little concerned at my age that I could be susceptible to death in this. But yeah, and I have friends that work up at NYPD, and they're seeing it. They're seeing the outcome up in hospitals up there. I have a good dear friend, Junior, who we work together with Tribe K. And so, yeah, I've not just personal experience, but I'm hearing from friends that are working in law enforcement or as EMTs and whatnot, and they're saying they're seeing the results of this. And unfortunately, I'll make this last point here too about that, is that there were doctors that were getting out on Facebook initially saying, "Oh, the flu kills more people," and I'm going, I wish you wouldn't say that. Yeah. Because we don't know, we don't have the statistical data. And I kept seeing this comparison, and I know you have training in.
Yeah, well, the most common one I was seeing right when it was starting was, but the flu has killed far more people and the cold has killed far more people. And I was going, well, yeah, they've spread all over the world for a long, long time. This right, just started, right? To it. Yeah, this just started. I mean, in other words, we've all had the flu, we've all had colds, and so it could get. Very few of us, a very small portion of the world's population, have had coronavirus. Exactly. And so you're looking at the actual mortality rates. In other words, out of the people who get this, how many of them actually die? And it's way higher than it is for the colds. The cold's not even in the running, but massively higher than the flu as well.
And the problem too that I keep seeing, and you've got training in formal epistemology with Bayesian, probability theorem, but I kept seeing people say, we have X number dead and X number have it. And I'm like, no, the habits are indeterminate. You want to compare dead to recovered. Because if you're going dead to have it, we don't know whether the habit are going to recover or not. I mean, far more will, but it's still too early on to make those determinations. And then the same doctors that were on Facebook, saying, no big deal. A lot of them have come back and reversed their position saying, oh my goodness, once I started seeing patients with this, because you typically die from the flu, you die from complications. You do actually die from sort of die from coronavirus. It is different. Let me be careful there. Granted, yeah, not everyone that has it. There's some people that, like my 2 daughters, you wouldn't have, had I not been confirmed, I would have just thought they had a flu. Now, the other thing, though, is that it did linger in them a lot longer. That's something that I've noticed with this.
So what were the symptoms like with your daughters?
They're same thing. So with all of us, it was upset stomach, but not like a horrible upset stomach. Loss of taste and smell. That was one that we did have as well. There was the headache, right? Sort of almost like a sinus headache, which is why initially I thought, this is the flu. The fever was different in the sense that it was a fever, but I mean, it felt, you ever taken a workout supplement that had like niacin in it, almost made your skin, for me, almost make your skin like tingly, itchy, burning. It was like that to me. Now, I don't know if it just was because the fever was high or what, but it did feel different. And the chest, the tightness in the chest was different as well. Typically with pneumonia, I had almost a rattly cough by the time I felt that. It was a wet sort of thing. This is more of an extreme pressure, if you will. Mm-hmm. Now, it may be different. Again, some people may have milder versions, and you're going to need to look at what the doctors are saying in terms of, categorically what they know. That's the problem, because this is novel. They're not sure what.
And that's actually part of the problem. Is that's why this disease spreads so rapidly. Is that lots of people have mild symptoms. If people had much worse symptoms, you get it and you just start coughing up blood and stuff like that. It's much easier to spot. Yeah. But because so many people have mild symptoms, they just think that it's a cold or another flu or something like that. Or some people just, hey, I have a little bit of an upset stomach or something like that. And in the meantime, they spend the next 2 weeks infecting people with the disease, going around infecting people because they have no idea that they have it. So, it's kind of in that range where it's bad enough to have a fairly high mortality rate, but it would almost be better if it had a much higher mortality rate, in the sense that if people could spot it, if the symptoms were much more dramatic, then you could spot it easier. You could spot it more easily, and it wouldn't be infecting so much people. So, pretty creepy stuff. Yeah, and with the mortality rate, because I was constantly doing the numbers when the numbers are released from various places, whether it's Italy or Korea or any of these places, China and so on, and then in the U.S. looking at here are the number of people who are infected, here are the number of people who've tested positive, and here are the number of people who died, and just doing the math was getting between 2 and 10% in the area, 2 and 10% mortality rate, and then it was always being suggested, well, that isn't necessarily the correct mortality rate, because it doesn't take into account all the people who have it but don't know they have it, and so they haven't been tested for it. Recently I saw a doctor who was saying, if you go with the sort of highest amount of people that we think might actually have it, and the people who've died so far, you're still at a mortality rate of about 0.6%, which is still massively higher than something like the flu. I mean, think, if my kid's got 2,000 kids in his school, if 2,000 kids got it, and that mortality rate held up. Now I understand, depending on your age and so on, it can be different. But you'd be talking about 12 dead kids in the school. You don't see that from the flu. It's very rare to have someone in your school die from the flu or something like that. And so, if you had that high a mortality rate from the cold or from the flu, people would be quarantining over the cold and the flu. Yeah. That would be considered much more dangerous.
Yeah, and there's other things I looked at. I'd gotten a world map. I don't know where it is right now. I'd share it with you, but I don't know where it is on my desktop, where it showed the median age or the ages in every country on the globe. And what was interesting is all the countries that had a higher median age had a higher death rate. Italy, Spain, I mean, you name it. It tracked. Now, I realize correlation does not imply causation, but in addition to that, seems to be the case that and this makes sense, with the amount of ventilators that need to be used for this because of what it's doing to the lungs, that once the medical system gets overwhelmed, that seems to be when the death rate spikes. So you've got a combination of things going on there, almost a perfect storm. If you've got not as good of an infrastructure medically, and you don't know what you need, and all of a sudden now you've got to ramp up production of ventilators. See, the U.S. we've been able to prep for it from what we've seen happening other places first. But yeah, it spreads like wildfire. I mean, think about the limited contact, and I know how limited our contact was with that person because I was already suspicious of everyone bringing deliveries. So, yeah.
And of course, there's you've got quarantining and I kind of get it when people say, "Come on, just let it run its course," and so on. But the idea behind the quarantining is just to slow it down because of that,
Correct.
because you don't have the respirators.
Correct.
And so,
yep.
Yeah. So
and the vaccines and all that other stuff. That's right. It's just trying to buy time so we can have those kind of things. That's right.
Yeah. 1 second. Yeah. You have vitamin C, vitamin Z in there, saying, but 20. What do you say? But 20 to 50,000 people. He says 20 to 50,000 people die from the flu in the U.S. each season. Yeah. Do the math. Calculate how many people actually get the flu. Calculate how many people actually get the flu, because we don't quarantine over the flu. And tons and tons and millions and millions and millions of people get the flu each year. And then you have the people who actually die from it, and you do the math and you get the mortality rate. And it's less than 0.1 of 1%. Hence,
that's right. It's between.
Yeah.
That's right.
Hence the best case scenario, right? When they're saying if we go with the highest numbers of the people we think might be infected, not people who've been tested, just the highest number of people we think might be positive for it, and we just factor in the deaths there, and notice you're still not getting the mortality rate because there are lots of people who have it but haven't died, and we don't know if they're going to die yet, right? They might die tomorrow, they might die a week from now. If you just factor in the deaths and the amount of people who might possibly have this disease, you're getting a mortality rate of about 0.6%. So you're already massively higher than you are for the flu. And again, that's best case scenario. If you just look at the actual statistics of the people that we know have it, and the amount of people who die, you're getting numbers like between 2 and 10%, depending on the average age in the country.
Yeah.
So, dude, if you're gonna sit here and pretend like this is the same thing, dude, I'm gonna have to regard you as someone who's basically it's like you guys are the problem, right? You guys are the problem.
And that's it, because if they don't take it serious, they end up spreading it.
One second, Sean. Looks like you got a little connectivity problem right now. Everything you just said was garbled, so that normally resolves itself after a couple seconds. That just happens. Okay. Just so you know, that's totally normal, unless you have top-notch internet like I do. But go ahead. I think you're good now.
Okay, sorry about that. So, that's the problem, is that when people don't take it seriously, they may be fine from it. That's not the issue. The issue is who they're going to infect and spread it to that may not be, people with underlying conditions. I think the new estimate, whatever he just quoted, 40,000 a year annually from the flu. Okay, but they're now estimating this at the low end at 100,000. So that's well over, the difference is staggering. And that's on the low end.
Yeah, and that's with every precaution we can take, and quarantining, and everyone social distancing, and everyone walking around wiping. I'm bringing sterile wipes kind of wherever I go. And again, guys, that sort of mentality of, oh, come on, it's chances are I'm going to be fine. That's my mentality, right? I'm like, go ahead, give me coronavirus, let me get it over with. I got a problem, namely I have two of my sons are on respirators, and so if they get come on, they're already on respirators. If all of a sudden they get coronavirus as well, chances are there's going to be pretty big problems there. So that's why I'm trying to be as careful as I can. But yeah, so I just go around, and when I need to get gas or something like that, I break out the sterile wipes. I thought about making a little video called the sterilizer, but I just walk around wiping down gas pumps and door handles everywhere, stores and stuff like that. And so but guys, so. The idea here is this is a disease that is, if you're not doing the social distance, because that's one of the main objections. They're just causing mass hysteria. I don't know. We're not hysterical. You got a couple people get a little hysterical over finding toilet paper or something like that. But overall, people are being pretty calm. I mean, if you think mass hysteria is like washing door handles and staying 6 feet away from people, I'd hate to see what you think when you see actual mass hysteria, because the idea here is, even if you really can't stop it, even if you really can't stop this and it's going to infect us all, it's much better if this happens over a significant period of time. One, because treatments are going to become more effective as time goes on, and they're working on more and more effective treatments and so on. But also, hospitals would be overwhelmed very, very rapidly, right? I mean, imagine.
Yep.
If 300 million people got the coronavirus, matter of fact, let's not go that high. Let's say 100 million people got coronavirus over the next month. So less than a third of the world of the population of the U.S. If 100 million people got coronavirus in the U.S., they estimate that about 15% of people who get coronavirus need to be hospitalized over it. So some people are fine. Some people just need to stay home, act like they got the flu and stuff and so on. But about 15% need to be hospitalized. Tons of people need respirators. You don't have
Right.
15 million hospital beds in respirators, and so you don't have anywhere near that. A respirator is a fairly rare piece of equipment. It's rare for people to need it. My kids need it. We have them, and so on. But these aren't things that you just have millions of these things laying around, and so you try to slow the disease down. You try to slow the disease down to save lives. And if you're not in favor of slowing a disease down to save lives, I kind of regard you as a creep and a weirdo. All right.
Yeah. And I think if we look at this logically, right, think of it this way: why would a president who prides himself on the economy being as high as it ever was could tank it intentionally?
Trump wants to take your guns.
Oh, which they haven't started doing. At least not where I'm at. Of course, I'm in the gun shine state, so I'm good there. But at any rate, it just doesn't make any sense to tank the economy and then give out all of that money. I mean, I don't understand why. That doesn't logically follow to me. Unless, maybe I'm not wearing my tinfoil hat today, and so it just doesn't make sense. But I don't get it.
Yeah, that's like most conspiracy theories, right? Like the one I heard from Muslims and some others, even some non-Muslims, for the years was about 9/11, and so this was a government.
Oh, yeah.
This was a government attack on our economic capital. On our economic capital, because they wanted to blame Muslims so that they could go over there and steal the oil. Well, great. If that was the one, think about the number of people who would need to be involved in that conspiracy. Two, think about, okay, if this was all a conspiracy under George Bush, you telling me later leaders who came along and would love to expose these guys just didn't do it?
Right.
So who's doing it, and who is it that's not exposing it, who has every reason to expose it? But even then, really, that was the plan? Because how well did that work out, right?
Right.
Oh yeah, you went in there, and I don't know if anyone noticed, but the price of gas got pretty bad for a long time. So what exactly did we get out of the deal? We got all that, and then of course you ended up in an endless war. What was it? Almost a 20-year war in Afghanistan. Yep. Tons of money lost. Can't even. Gosh, how much money was lost on all of that? If that was some conspiracy, man, that was the dumbest thing of all time. And you would just expect someone to come forward and say, man, I got the documents right here. That is the stupidest thing we've ever done. Let me explain why, so that we never do this again. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Not to mention, I don't recall seeing any oil fields when I was in Afghanistan, but I know somebody will, rare earth minerals, whatever. Again, you can't mine them in these areas, guys. You can't. It's a perpetual war zone all the time.
Yeah. All right, hang on. We have this was earlier, but yeah, I haven't been paying attention to the chat too much, but here you have a. This is totally off topic, but some people just love to go off topic. But Ikram Niazi said, Quran is the only word of God in which God directly speaks in first person speech, unlike Bible or other books where God is quoted by third person, like God said this, Jesus said this, blah blah. So he's saying here you have first-person speech. Now, to be clear, you have tons of first-person speech in the Bible. But if he's saying that this is the prized characteristic of the Quran, let me go ahead and read the first surah of the Quran, Surah Al-Fatiha. And so it says, starting at verse 1, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, Praise be to Allah, Lord of worlds, the beneficent, the merciful, master of the day of judgment. Thee alone we worship, thee alone we ask for help. Show us the straight path, the path of those whom thou hast favored, not the path of those who earn thine anger, nor of those who go astray. Now here's what's interesting, Ikram. You're saying this is first person. You just said it. You said it right there. The Quran is first person. So, if this is first person, then this is Allah speaking. This is Allah speaking, right? This is not us speaking to Allah. This is Allah speaking to us. It's first person, right? Well, what does Allah say? Allah says, in the name of Allah, the beneficent, the merciful, praise be to Allah, Lord of worlds. So he's saying, he's praising himself, the beneficent, the merciful, master of the day of judgment. Thee alone we worship. So wait a minute, Allah is talking to another Allah, because he says, thee alone do we worship, thee alone do we ask for help. If this is first person, then Allah is saying he worships someone else, and he's saying he's asking someone else for help. And then Allah asks, oh my goodness, Allah says, show us the straight path. So one, you've got Allah and someone else. Who's he talking about? The angels? Allah is speaking to someone else and praying to that other Allah, saying, please help me, show me the straight path. Allah's begging for help for the straight path. And then he says, the path of those on whom thou hast favored, not of those who've earned your anger. So, my goodness, now you've just admitted that Islam is polytheistic, and that the first person God of the Quran, the God who is speaking in the Quran, actually has another God that he prays to, and he prays for this God to guide him on the straight path. Wow, Ikram, boy, I'm really interested in your polytheistic religion. Now, say you're sorry, or I might have to make a video on this. All right, back to you. All right, we got about 10 more minutes. I'll just turn it over for questions now. If anyone have any questions for Sean or questions about coronavirus, now is the time. There's too many here for me to actually go through them all, so I'm just skipping them all the way down here. And if you have any questions, it doesn't have to be about coronavirus. If you have any questions about anything else that Sean said, or apologetics or anything like that, I'm happy to look at those right now.
I specialize in. Oh, go ahead.
Now people are looking at now people are making fun of Islam for being polytheistic. See what you did, Ikram? See what you did? You see this?
Poor guy.
All right, what were you going to say? That you're about to say your areas of specialty?
Oh, I was just going to say I specialize in epistemology of religion. That's my coin that. But epistemology as far as with apologetics and whatnot, and.
Now, Fahim tries to go in there and rescue Ikram. Fahim says David Wood, Allah in Surah Al-Fatiha is teaching on how to pray. This what us Muslims have to say. Wrong. Fahim, throughout the rest of the Quran, whenever Allah is telling you to say something, what does he say? He says say. He says, oh, you believe, say this. Or you, Muhammad, say this. Surah Al-Fatiha does not have say in it. So there's no, this is what you guys need to say. So he's not talking to someone else. But here's the problem, right? So this is the eternal speech of Allah, right? This is the eternal word of Allah, the eternal speech of Allah. So from all eternity, in other passages, Allah is from all eternity reciting, say this, say that. So he just knows one day he's going to show up and tell people, say this, say that, okay? But in Surah Al-Fatiha, there's no say. There's no say. It's just, oh, Allah, we praise you, and so on. So from all eternity, Allah is saying this. This is Allah's eternal speech. He's saying pray. He's saying guide me. He's saying lead me on the straight path. So Allah says this from all eternity. There's not one word in Surah Al-Fatiha saying this is what you Muslims should pray. This is just Allah saying it from all eternity. And you got a problem there. Fahim, I'm not the one who said this is all first person. You guys said it's first person. And you guys use this to trump the Bible. Now you're saying, oh, no, that's not first person. This is Allah telling us how we're supposed to pray, but he forgot to say that this is what I'm telling you guys to say. There's not one word in there about this is what you guys say. There's nothing about that. So Allah just messed that part up. You guys said it's all first person. You guys said it.
To use a little logic here. Fahim, is that who it is?
This is Fahim, to be clear, Fahim isn't the one who made the claim earlier. That was Ikram, so we wouldn't hold him responsible. But he's saying this is Allah. He's saying this is Allah teaching us how to pray. But by the way, a little side note, Fahim, that's one of the reasons that Ubay ibn Ka'b, Ibn Masud said that this isn't supposed to be part of the Quran, right? He's saying the Quran, and this is modern Muslims today. There are the group that's called Quran only Muslims. They don't believe that this is supposed to be in the Quran, right? They say the Quran is Allah speaking to us. Fatiha is us speaking to Allah. If the Quran is Allah's speech to us, then that means Allah's praying, and Allah can't be praying. Right. So they reject that as part of the Quran, right? Ibn Masud said this is not supposed to be part of the Quran. This is our prayer. By the way, he also said Surah 113 and Surah 114 are not supposed to be in the Quran because these are prayers, right? These are all prayers. And so, and you might say, well, who cares what Ibn Masud say? Problem is, your prophet said, if you want to learn the Quran from anyone, learn it from Ibn Masud. So the guy that your prophet said to learn the Quran from said that the Quran you've got today is wrong. It contains chapters that are not supposed to be in the Quran, right? And so you got two possibilities. If you say, no, we have the correct Quran, then Ibn Masud was wrong, and Muhammad was wrong about the guy you should go to. Muhammad didn't even know who you should go to learn the Quran from. Or you can say, nope, Muhammad does know what's supposed to be in the Quran. So too, he would know whom you should go to, and he said go to Ibn Masud, and Ibn Masud says, all right, we need to take 3 chapters out of the Quran. I've got a Quran right here. If you want to come and rip these chapters out to be in alignment with your prophet, you're welcome to do that. All right, let's see if we have some questions. Because, guys, we try to have a nice conversation, try to talk about coronavirus. The dudes can't stop. They can't stop, right? It's like, let's just keep blurting out stuff that has nothing to do with anything we're talking about. Just so, because, I mean, they're almost like plants, right? You might think they're like Christians that have been planted here to make Islam look bad and get me to start going after after Islam.
And it sounded like contradictory. I didn't realize it was 2 people, because the one says all are a universal statement, and one makes a universal affirmative, and the other makes a particular negative. Well, no, that's a direct contradiction, guys. You can't say all verses are this and then some are not. Mm-hmm. That can't work. Mm-hmm. So.
And then we have Hayden Tang says, you say Allah prays, but you forget Allah prays for Muhammad, not to Muhammad. So don't ever forget that, everyone. If anyone tells you that Allah prays to Muhammad, he's wrong. That's why you.
So that's better. So Allah needing to pray for Muhammad.
No. It's a joke. I was having a debate. I was having a debate with a Muslim, and I said, according to the Quran, Allah prays for Muhammad. That's what I said. I said it repeatedly. Allah prays for Muhammad. Right. Then when the Muslim got up, he says, okay, well, David says that Allah prays to Muhammad. Something I never said. I've never said once in my entire life. He says, David says that Allah prays to Muhammad, but I'm going to have to give him an Arabic lesson. The Muslims start laughing and cheering and stuff. And then he says, so it's Allah prays for Muhammad, not to Muhammad. And the Muslim crowd burst into tears. Yay, you've destroyed David. And all he did was confirm exactly what I said about the Quran. So this is just amazing stuff. So anyway, that's kind of the brilliant. That's kind of the joke right here. All right, so let me just click on these rapid fire. Benjamin Handelman said, how big a fan of David Wood is Sean? He's been laughing the whole time.
I love David. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So you're the one. John Beaver said, Sean, did you get it from the package itself or the delivery person?
Not sure. I wish I could say for certain. I had very limited contact with the person. I mean, we didn't actually touch hands or anything. They were literally handing me the bags, and I was carrying them in. So,
so it's basically there was no way for it to get in except that delivery, and so it could be the guy or could be something in the package. So in other words, the concern, I mean, obviously if a person has coronavirus and he hands you your package, he's getting it on the package. I think the concern is that even if that dude doesn't have it, if he brings you a bag, but a pack of ramen noodles was contaminated because someone at the ramen noodle factory contaminated it, and then you're just handing groceries, in which case everyone's going to be freaking out about the groceries themselves.
Or the stock person, or the the bag boy or bag girl, bag person, the cashier, whoever. Yeah, anyone that's coming in contact. Now they are saying that they don't think it lives on cardboard for longer than I think a day now. Where they were saying I think something like 9 days on surfaces.
Yeah, I've seen different estimates, but I've seen 5 and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a couple comments along the lines of treatment. So Emma said, "What do you take at home to treat it?" And Tech 1302 said, "Did you take any medicine for it, like
Yes.
vitamins or antiviral?"
So great questions. Unfortunately, don't have any antivirals. I wish I did. I don't know. Of course, I don't know what that would have done. We assume if you know enough about antivirals to ask that you probably know enough. In theory, I guess it could. I have amoxicillin and do I have doxycycline too here at the house? And so I was taking that, and that I think is probably what kept me out of the ER. Mm-hmm. Now this wasn't. This was left over from a cavity I had filled, and so I just save that stuff when I get it. I know if there's MDs in the house, oh, you shouldn't do that. You're supposed to throw it away. Yeah. How many people actually do that, guys? All right, whatever. But in addition, then I actually started on vitamin C. I was waiting on it. I had ordered it, and of course they were out, like toilet paper and everything else. Finally showed up about 4 days ago. I started taking it, and that seemed to make a huge difference. Now I've been eating fresh fruits, grapefruits, oranges, whatever we can get, but of course it's in limited supply. So that did seem to help. Otherwise, I ate fairly normal, but Erica, my wife, keeps me pretty healthy. She's very good about feeding me healthy stuff. So.
Now, Nuxa says, now that Sean has recovered, he doesn't have to worry about getting coronavirus. Praise God for that. Is that correct?
Amen.
Because I've heard conflicting info on that.
Correct. So it seems to be the case that you can get it again. There seems to be a reoccurrence, and it's possible that, I don't know for certain, so let me be careful, Nuxa. That's a great question, or thought, statement, however you want to look at it. And I'm not certain that's the case. If anything, you can get it again, and this may actually potentially end up being a seasonal thing for all of us. But again, once the vaccine's there and the medicines are available to everyone, it won't be such a big deal. Not to mention, hopefully, immunity to it, where it won't be so novel.
You've kind of touched on this, but just to be clear on it, Tatiana's asking, is he fully recovered now, and the daughters? So what's it looking like?
Good. So for me, I am not fully recovered, and the daughters are a few days behind me. We are all at the turning point where we're feeling a lot better. So in terms of, I think yesterday was the first day I told my wife I felt human. I mean, like my chest wasn't just
so
painful.
Yesterday was where you had kind of a turning point.
Yeah, and before that I could feel it going down, but yesterday the pain in my chest, and I say pain more like discomfort, I guess, stopped. And so that was really a big deal. And then today, until David was making me laugh, my chest was okay. But yeah, you guys have no idea how good of a guy David is, and is a good friend to a lot of us.
You got that right.
I think Benjamin Handelman. I think I know who that is. He's joking around.
Oh yeah.
But, yeah.
You have here's one from Fred Sanford. Now I don't know to what extent you are an expert on this. I'm imagining that once you started realizing you have it, you probably have been doing a lot of reading and so on. But Fred Sanford, yes, the Fred Sanford, said, question for Sean. What do you recommend for those of us who are older and more vulnerable? Thank God for my son Lamont, who is helping me out.
So what I would suggest, Fred, is first of all, if you can get Hibiclens, do that. Now I know some MDs can say, well, we don't know. Yeah, all right, fair enough. But it's just soap that's going to work. And what you'd want to do is wash from about hand and elbow, like a surgeon would, preparing, and that way, hopefully it will help kill the virus if it comes in contact with you once a day. It should be more than enough. In fact, you don't want to overuse it. And the reason why is you can actually lower your body's immunity. But if you're susceptible, now I'm talking about, okay, if you really do have a son or daughter, or loved one that's leaving the house a lot and coming home, as much as is possible, have them not right on the front doorstep, but have them go straight to the bathroom, strip down, shower off. Those types of things can help dramatically. If you can't isolate yourself in your home, if that's the case, where you do have family members coming and going, that can definitely help. I mean, we have 5 children and my wife and I, so that we're a fairly large family. And I was able to keep the rest of the family from getting it, other than the two daughters. Of course, we didn't know they had it because I was already sick when I found out I was just getting sick when we found out they were. So that was the unfortunate side. In addition to that, you just try to, eat healthy, drink water, and just try to isolate yourself. I mean, that's it. Now, if you can get, apparently, and again, I'm not an MD, talk to your doctor. Call them and ask. They're suspecting that the malaria drug combined with the Z-Pak, even just the malaria drug, may be a prophylactic. And for those of you who, at the grade school humor level, like David and I, that prophylactic there just means, preventative. Okay, so you can take that, and they think. But again, talk to your doctor, because I'm not an MD. I just play one on TV. So,
Finding Truth, and Finding Truth. You were on. You were in the comments the other day with Braxton Hunter, right? Is that? Because no, Finding Truth here. But he said, yeah. He said, but are you guys aware of some of the videos about what's happening in Ecuador? If true, dead people are being set on fire in the streets.
That wouldn't. Wow, that's scary and sad. It's interesting because what I've noticed is all the communist countries are reporting very low. You look at Russia. I know Cuba, you might argue socialist, whatever, but a lot of these where they have stricter governments, let's just say it that way, are reporting very low numbers, even and including some South American countries. But no, I wasn't aware of that. I actually have a neighbor who's from Ecuador. I don't think Manny will talk to me right now, but when he's seen me walking around with the mask. But once I'm better, I'll have to ask him. But no, I mean, and I don't know where that's coming from, but wow.
Phil asks this a question for me. Do you think Hajj 2020 will still occur this year? No, I don't. Nope. I do not believe that it will happen. You might have some Muslims rebel and want to do it anyway, but I believe that the Saudi government will not allow it, and that they'll start mass arresting people if they need to. So I think they'll put soldiers out there if they need to.
Did you do a video on where yeah, you did, where the Muslim cleric or whoever it was coming out and saying that the coronavirus was the angel of death, and only
he's calling it a soldier of Allah.
Soldier of Allah, that's what it was. Yeah, and saying that only. Yeah. I'm like, does he realize that we get news about Iran? That are there no Muslims in Iran anymore? Like they've had a lot of dead there. I don't understand.
Well, that dude is hardcore Sunni who doesn't believe they're real. She is a real Muslim. Now, just to be fair, ladies and gentlemen, you do have Christian pastors and stuff who say, we're gonna go ahead and get it, and whatever God wants to happen, happen. But it's kind of a different category. If you have a Christian pastor saying that Christians are immune to this disease and only Muslims are getting it, and that's because Allah, or God or Jesus or whoever is punishing. Go ahead and make fun of that guy, because he deserves it for saying that stuff. There are too many. We're talking to a guy who's got it, right? And we're talking to a Christian apologist who's got it right now. This is kind of a different kind of question, but God is Good 777 says, "Hello, Sean. How can I learn more about your epistemology of religion?"
So there's a couple ways. We actually also have a deeper group, but I don't want you to have to pay money to do that. But definitely go over to Believing Thinkers. I'm gonna be diving into that quite a bit. In fact, David, can I plug a episode we're gonna have?
I'm laid back. You can plug anything you want.
All right. So this coming Saturday, I'm gonna have Dr. Liz Jackson, not related to Michael Jackson or Jackson Guitars, but she still rocks, and she's gonna be on.
That was terrible.
She's still going to be on this Saturday on our channel at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, talking about credences and belief dualism, which is it sounds like all nerdy and whatever, but it's profound as far as what the ramifications are, I think, for religion and whatnot. And I'm going to be diving into it a lot more. In fact, I joked around with David saying, "What do you think about Kali epistemology on the Mixed Martial Apologetics?" And he just looked at me, didn't say anything. I'm like, "Oh, that bad, huh?" All right, but that's sort of my thing, and the reason, just so you guys understand why, is that epistemology is really at the heart of everything we do in terms of what is knowledge, how can we obtain it, justification, truth, and so we deal with it all the time. David deals with it in his apologetics. I deal with it when people argue with you about what counts as evidence. That's my particular forte, and so I'm doing an interdisciplinary study of law and that to show how one sort of demonstrates the other. But we'll be doing a lot more on Believing Thinkers, not as much on the MMA channel. So
Michelle Marie says, let's see, Michelle Marie in the super. Why is this not going in? Whoops. Okay. Michelle Marie says, Sean, how fast did the coronavirus come on? Is it like the flu where 1 minute you feel fine and then all of a sudden you get hit with a fever and inability to breathe? I've had that experience where I'm just totally fine, then 5 minutes later, just horrible.
Yeah, it did. It for me, it was. It's hard to say because I don't get sick much because again we isolate. We already. It's not that I'm a shut-in. It's a long story. I was in a bad car accident back in September. So without a vehicle for 4 months because GM workers went on strike right when it needed to be repaired. So I literally didn't leave my yard for 4 months. So I've gotten used to living that way. I don't get sick that much because of it. So I noticed, quite possibly because I don't get sick as often. Who knows? So I sort of felt the ramp up a little bit. Now, however, yes, once it kicked in like that, especially the tightness in the chest, that was all of a sudden. And that's what was, to me, was terrifying. Because when I woke up in the middle of that night gasping for air, that sort of, I was like, okay, I might need to go to the hospital tomorrow. So, yeah.
This is completely unrelated to anything, but John Buckley said, David, what's your opinion of Christians listening to classic rock? John Buckley, I listen to classic rock.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah.
I was listening to some yesterday while studying.
Yeah, so, I listen. I mean, Pink Floyd's my favorite band of all time. Like 3 of my top 10 favorite songs of all time are Pink Floyd songs and so on. I would say it's going to come down to the person. If you're listening to some band that is influencing you to have negative thoughts or something like that, then you personally might want to veer away from that. That doesn't have to be that could be anything. If like me, it helps, that just the sort of rhythms, it helps keep me alert while I'm working and doing stuff, right? And so it keeps your brain like there was actually a scientific study that showed that Aerosmith is on average the best music to listen to while you're driving, because they say a certain beat, a certain tempo actually stimulates your brain to keep you more alert while driving. And they said on average Aerosmith has the most songs that are in that range, and they said so put in an Aerosmith CD and that'll keep you from dying. So that's kind of how I listen to music and so on. But again, if it's messing you up and you're I don't know, then might want to have some different thoughts. Alice Shaw said, Sean, do you specialize in a specific epistemology? I don't know anything about this subject.
Yeah, so it would depend. That's a great question. I tend to lean to internalism and of that evidentialism, although I'm sort of still on the fence about some things. And that you're going to find that a lot with philosophers and variations to things that you think are just settled issues. But for me, again, evidentialism and the way I deal with evidence is a little different. In fact, what's interesting, and David will know who A.J. Ayer is.
A.J. Ayer?
He said this. Yeah, A.J. Ayer. He said this, you may be familiar with this quote. For my own part, I think that if one were looking for a single phrase to capture the stage to which philosophy has progressed, the study of evidence would be a better choice than the study of language. Now, that's interesting because he had a book, literally Language, Truth, and Logic, and he was an analytic philosopher where they really focused on language. So to say that, it might be better to call it a study of evidence right now. And that's a big focus in epistemology right now, and particularly that's why I lean on my legal studies. In fact, I have friends that are attorneys, family members that are a friend that's a judge, so I will lean on them and say, hey, I think I've got an illustration here of something that crosses over from epistemology to law. Is that the case? Can this count as evidence for this? And we'll talk about it. So evidence is really my primary focus. If that makes sense. I'm not sure if that was the question in particular. And that is so relevant to us as Christians because what can we count as evidence? Can the Holy Spirit witness to us be evidence? What kinds of things can count as that?
Mm-hmm. Hayden Tang says, talking to me, says, what would you say to Quran-only Muslims when the 5 pillars of Islam are in the Hadiths, not the Quran? Now, just to be clear, mm-hmm. You don't have the 5, these are the 5 pillars of Islam in the Quran. That comes from the Hadith. But the elements of the 5 pillars, like making sure you pray and stuff like that, they are there in the Quran. They're just not as clearly laid out as they are in the Hadith. But to be clear, when you have something like the Shahada, you have a kind of Shahada in the Quran, where you're supposed to say that, Allah is the only God. There's no
Mm-hmm.
God but Allah. But as far as the full Shahada, where you say there's no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger, I actually brought this up to a Quran-only Muslim once, and I said, well, that's not in the Quran. So do you recite
Oh.
the Shahada? And he goes, no, it's shirk. And I'm like, whoa, a
Wow.
Quran only Muslim called the Shahada shirk. And I was like, what? Wait a minute. You're calling the Shahada. You're saying all these Muslims around the world who are reciting the Shahada, it's shirk. He said, yeah. What are you doing putting Muhammad beside Allah in there? And so notice it's the same thing lots of non-Muslims use to criticize Islam. Wait a minute. In your foundational creed, you've got Allah and Muhammad. You've got Allah and Muhammad. Muhammad has to be in there. If Islam is just, if Islam is really just pure monotheism, it should just be God, 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 God. Not, oh my goodness, Muhammad this, Muhammad that. Oh, so great, Muhammad. Oh, so wonderful, Muhammad, 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 Muhammad. Right? I had my one of my professors of Islam in college. What he said where I come from, I forget where it was, somewhere in the Middle East. But he said, where I come from, we have a saying: say it about God, but not about Muhammad. Right? It's saying, look, you could even say that about God, but you better not say it about Muhammad, or
Wow.
we're going to get violent. So yeah, just keep in mind, Hayden. Yep, they have for Quran only Muslims. They regard a lot of what Muslims do. They regard a lot of what Muslims do and believe as blasphemy, especially the emphasis on Muhammad. If you talk to a Quran only Muslim, matter of fact, I should get some of these guys on here and let them break it down. But if you talk to a Quran only Muslim, they say, look, who is Muhammad? Who's Muhammad? He's a mailman. He's a mailman who delivered a message. He got the message. He passed on the message. Right? If you're
Nice.
he even said this is a. This is a Quran only Muslim. He goes, look, if you're sitting at the door and the postman brings you a letter and it's a letter from the President of the United States, you don't sit there and say, oh, thank you, mailman. Oh, let's celebrate the mailman. Let's build all my views around the mailman because the mailman brought me this. He said, no, you say, no, thank you, and you focus on the message. He says, but all of a sudden we got Muhammad. He gives the message. He's the mailman in this picture, and we build our entire religion around this guy. What is this? And so, yep,
Nice.
straight up shirk and paganism, according to Quran only Muslims.
You should totally do a skit on that one.
Yeah. Let's see. Someone says, wear masks everywhere you go. Take vitamin D. Do not reduce fever unless dangerously high. Watch Dr. John Campbell here on YouTube. Have you heard that? Don't reduce I guess because the fever has a good purpose.
No, I would be careful about that because the problem with the coronavirus fever, now I can understand to some extent the wisdom of the sort of naive wisdom of that. And I don't mean that naive as an insult. You guys, if you're familiar with philosophy, that has a different connotation to it than what you may be taking that to mean. But the problem with the coronavirus fever is it gets high. And fevers are not generally, when you're talking about a high fever, good. It's going to cause brain damage, which is why you need to get them down. So I would caution against that. Again, I'm not an MD, but I did have a tremendous amount of medical training in the military and throughout my life. So I don't know. Yeah.
You had multiple questions about sleeping in your office, and people asking if you had a hammock. And Taco Junebug said, "How did you sleep in your office?" Now before you even respond, if you have a couch, that's one thing. But I'm guessing if you spent all that time in the military, you're probably pretty comfortable sleeping in most places.
So yeah, so yes and no. I mean, yes, I am. I've slept on aircraft, and a C-130 is very uncomfortable to sleep on, but you do it. You usually sling up hammocks or whatever if it's a long trip. If you can. Mm-hmm. And for me, I've slept with a rock as a pillow. I've literally slept in rain in Afghanistan with nothing over my head. I mean, we were somebody called it war wagon it. We would literally either walk or drive somewhere, get out, and walk some more, and you just sleep wherever. You're not in tents, or you don't have anything, and then you've got armor on, and you might take your head cover off, or might not wear one at all, depending on the unit, but you're going to have that plate armor on. So that's uncomfortable. But once I got out of the military, I had two promises: I'm going to be comfortable when I sleep, and I'm not going to be cold. Mm-hmm. So I have a giant king size air mattress. Mm-hmm. So you think I'm so hardcore, right?
Yeah.
Eating snakes and whatnot in here, roughing it. And it was actually nice because this is a small portion of my books, the big shelf. If those of you guys have watched our videos that are over there, and I have a big open space with some chairs. So I took the chairs out.
No, because I know you can get used to something after a while. And I guess you're just getting soft over time. But I remember, so I spent over 5 years in jails and prisons, and I got out, and a normal bed didn't feel normal, didn't feel right.
Prison. Yeah. I don't know if it was like that.
I built myself a prison bunk. I constructed myself a prison bunk that was this wide, and I took a futon mattress and sort of altered it so that it was actually like a prison mattress, and that's what I slept in until I got married and then had to come up with a different plan there. Megsy Me says, do you think the average person will be okay? And that's kind of an issue because, here's what's scary. I mean, if this was messing you up and causing you intense pain, I mean, we're looking at you thinking, okay, it's not like you're 22, but you're not old, and you've had tons of military training and martial arts training, so we're guessing that you are on the really healthy end of the spectrum. And so if it's causing you problems, most people are thinking, okay, then people who are older and not in as good a shape, what's the situation going to be like for them? But I'm guessing, yes, the average person is gonna make it through and be okay, right?
Yeah, because I don't think I was at a point where I was in my life was in jeopardy. That high point or the low point, depending on how you want to look at it, when I woke up gasping for air was one time, and I knew I wasn't short of breath, so I know what to look for. I knew my blood pressure wasn't in the wrong, either way, in the wrong direction. So for the most part, I was okay, or it was within tolerable measures, I guess I should say. The other thing is that, I wouldn't panic. Above all, guys, as a pastor, I'm going to tell you, don't panic. You're going to be fine. And whatever condition I'm in, I've learned therewith to be content. And if you are a safe Christian, I mean, departing this world is scary, but at least you don't have to worry about the destination. Mm-hmm. However, the likelihood of that statistically is still fairly low. And I think the reason we're seeing higher death rates in other countries, just to say it again, is that because they've got an older population, and I'm 45, guys, which is actually a higher risk for this disease. Mm-hmm. So part of it is I'm a scholar now, so I sit in my office and study all the time. I need to exercise more.
Getting soft.
I have I have an injury, and so that's not helping. I had been going to physical therapy, but as soon as back in February when I saw the handwriting on the wall, I canceled that indefinitely. So there is some of that where you would think I'd be healthier than I actually am in that sense. So that probably played into it to some extent, but you should be okay. Now there are, people that pass away. Again, so what can you do? Eat right, isolate when you can. If you come home because you've been out, wash your hands constantly. Don't put your hands to your face, nose, eyes, or mouth. Just try to get in the habit of not doing this, and that's going to increase quite a bit, and mm-hmm. so that can really help. Mm-hmm. Social distancing.
Yeah, and so on the age thing, we cannot emphasize enough, ladies and gentlemen, stay away from old people. I don't mean for your sake, I mean for their sake. Sake, right? The death rates are significantly higher as your age increases. So that's why, that people have pointed out that it kind of goes against your natural inclination. If you're worried and the disease is spreading, you want to rush to your family and be with your family. Nope. Talk to grandma on Skype, talk to grandpa on Skype until this thing hopefully blows over at some point.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just to put a pin in that last statement I was making too, think of it this way, guys. As far as we know so far, none of my other family members have exhibited signs. We're all in the same house, and we have not left. And so if we're able to just cut down on that, them getting it by practicing these, having good practices, if you do that, it should stand to reason that you should be able to avoid it as well. Mm-hmm. So that's all I want to say about it.
Couple super chats and super stickers that I want to miss. Solitary Emmy in the supers with the super sticker. Looks like a laughing fox. Rebel Mark in the super chat says, God bless David and congrats on the views. He's referring, of course, if you
Oh, that's right.
100 million. I mean, just think about that, right? If on average each one of those people is watching 100 videos, which I think, I know there are people who watch 100 videos or more, but I think that's, pretty high. But even if each person averages 100 videos, that would still be a million people who've averaged 100 videos. If it's lower, if the average viewer has watched 50, then you're talking 2 million people. 2 million people have watched on average 50 of my videos and stuff. I mean, gosh, this is some massive power here to handle. I don't know if I can handle all this power that the internet has given me.
And you guys remember, who did he have on his show when he hit it? I'm kidding. Yeah.
Who did I have on this day? Sean Hurst, mixed Martial Apologetics. Slavic Stritz in the super chat says zinc and vitamin D3 and quercetin helps MedCram. Look it up. There's like 8 words in this comment that I don't know what they are. Do you know what quercetin is? It
sounds like it's either antiviral or anti-malaria. I don't know. Guys, I've been out of medicine for a while, so I wouldn't.
Cheryl R in the super chat says this is for the mass sterilizing fund, aka Clorox wipes, and trickle down apologist fund. Yeah, so I do go around. I would like to start my sterilizer videos and just like hope a bunch of people follow it and just like randomly go around sterilizing stuff. That's
a good trend.
It's not something that's going to totally change everything, but if 1,000 people go out and sterilize a bunch of stuff and you end up saving 2 or 3 old people's lives, what the heck? That sort of thing is that's worth it. We already answered that one. We have Lisa Look and JoJo Momster with the super stickers. We have Hello Worldwide just saying hello. And Hindu Historian said, thanks for making these live streams. Matter of fact, I got that one right here. Hindu Historian, who is Hindu, as you might have guessed from the name. Hindu Historian says, thanks for making these live streams. Gives me something to watch while stuck at home. Yeah, that's kind of the plan, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, we're trying to forge a habit here, right? Because if people are used to going to work every day and then going somewhere else and then going to church on the weekends, going to other places, visiting people, and then we all have to kind of be stuck at home. I pointed out before that's fine with me because what the heck, I love making videos all day, so that's actually perfect for me. But you. On the one hand, you don't want to get what's called cabin fever because then you can just start losing your mind and just have to go out and have to start running around doing stuff. But it's good if people can make the best of it and just start, okay, well, let me just do stuff online. And when people are having live streams and stuff like that, that'll be I still get to talk to people. I'll still get to hang out with people. And so we're making everything virtual. So yeah, that is the idea behind doing more live streams during this pandemic. Hang on, Pedro Jr. said, we'll be wrapping up here in a second. But Pedro Jr. said, David, are you going to make AP become the next Nabil after the debate? And also, how do you answer this objection? When I say he did something wrong, it means I don't like what he did. God bless you. So I can't make AP become the next Nabil Qureshi. I know we talk trash and act like that, but at the end of the day, that's between God and AP. As for the objection, he says, this objection, when I say he did something wrong, it means I don't like what he did. So I guess he's saying if you're trying to defend the idea of objective morality, that there are certain rules that we're obligated to follow. So I guess the question is, what do you do if someone says, well, no, what you're really saying when you say he did something wrong is you're saying I don't like that. Well, if you don't believe in any sort of objective moral standard, that is kind of what you're stuck with, right? That is kind of what you're stuck with. And so I just point out the implications. I'll say, okay, so when we talk about Hitler gassing Jews, you'd say that when I say he did something wrong, all I'm saying is, well, I don't like what he did. I don't like vanilla ice cream. I don't like Hitler gassing Jews, or Stalin with the Ukrainians, right? They went in and starved millions of Ukrainians to death, right? You know what they did? They went in there, they made it so that they can't get out of their land. They went in, burned all their crops, took every bit of food, went searching for food, brought in dogs to sniff around for food to make sure they weren't hiding any food, and then just left them to starve that year. And that was to get rid of their population and stop them from thinking that they could do what they want. And starving an entire population to death. Are you just saying that that's I don't prefer that? And so I just kind of go down the list. Hey, this guy who John Wayne Gacy raped and killed more than 30 young men and boys. Is that just my personal preference? I don't like that, and if I did like it, well, then he did nothing. I can't say he actually did anything wrong. Anyway, that's I just go down the list because. And, you get to the point where you want to just punch the dude in the face and say, did I do something wrong there? Or is that just you don't like, bam, you want to do it again? But you can't do that. You're Christian. What are your thoughts on this? Sean?
Yeah, I agree that there's a grounding problem. And people, that's what they don't understand. Very oftentimes I hear this objection as if they understand what we're saying to be that they can't be moral people or these sort of things. And I'm like, no, that's not the issue. The issue is that you can't ground it in anything, guys. In other words, there's no foundation for it, which means it's completely subjective, which was David's point in the debate with Dillahunty. And of course, there was some either equivocation or some just outright ad hocness going on there. But either way, the issue is that without that grounding, in other words, let me put it this way. Without that grounding, you can't say slavery was wrong. Mm-hmm. Because wrong by what? Now, I'm not saying that it wasn't. In fact, it was horrible. Mm-hmm. David would say the same thing. However, you don't have an objective grounds by which to say it. Because if you say, well, society decides, the problem is back then, society, if they said it was okay, you can't. The problem is you're fighting against that. Does that make sense what I'm saying there, David?
Yeah.
With that?
No, there's no, I mean, the entire idea of condemning various practices, right? Like as I mentioned before, I have a machine for making toast, right? No one would have a problem with me owning that machine for making toast. I say, okay, I own a hamster. I don't actually own a hamster, but I did at one point. But imagine if I have a hamster. A hamster is, according to Richard Dawkins, a machine for propagating DNA. I can own that machine for propagating DNA. I can own a hamster, and I can own a cage for him. You move up the line. You take a dog or a cow or something like that. You can own a dog. You can own a cow. You can own these things. Well, what about a human? Why can't you own a human? And there's just it's just funny that people like Dillahunty and these other guys. These are the guys that rail against it nonstop. I can't believe in slavery. Well, you grew up in an environment where people condemn slavery. Thanks to Christians. Christians are the one who spread that idea. You can go back a few hundred years. You can go to the great atheist or deist Enlightenment thinkers, and most of these guys were defending slavery. Why? They grew up in an environment where slavery was acceptable. And so that if you're just looking at this from a secular perspective, it looks like people generally believe what they're taught to believe in their culture. And if you're looking at that from outside, it looks like a big joke, right? It looks like a big joke. So either you believe that there is a foundation, an objective foundation for not treating people certain ways or for treating people certain ways, or it comes down to something else. And if all the views you're telling me are just the views of your generation, and if I went to a different place in the world, they'd be different. And if I went to a different time period, they'd be different. Unless you have some reason to say, no, I'm right and everyone else is wrong, you got no business. You got no business telling people that you know what you're talking about. So that's my view there.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and close out. I did see a couple more super chats pop up real quick that I will check out real quick, and then we're gonna. Oh, cool! I see 2 super stickers. That means those aren't actually comments. So Radical Love posted 2, and we have a looks like a fox with a heart. I still don't know if the fox is eating that heart or if the fox is just being sweet. And then there's a nice little fox. Then Tokukwu Njoku said, "Hi David, off topic I know, but I wanted to know what you're doing to support people you're making ex-Muslims through your brilliant videos. By the way, well done for reaching 100 million." Well, sadly, there's not a lot I can do for people who are in other countries. So I try to encourage them to, find a church if you're in an area with the church. Stay safe. If they're in dangerous countries, I tell them, if you can get out of the country, get out of the country. If you can get to a Western country, get out of the Western country. Go and tell them you're a convert and you want out of there. And, we'll hopefully things will turn out well. But there is one of the things that I've talked to a ministry in Canada about doing is there needs to be a sort of entire online experience for new Christians, right? For people who've left Islam and have become Christians, right? Because some people are in areas where they can't go to a church, right? Yeah. And they can't go announce to the world that they're Christians and so on. So they basically need everything to be online. Unless they can get out of there, they need everything to be online. And so the idea is, I'm going to have Anthony make a series on basically running through all the foundations of the faith, right? So basic theology, right. And then we'll have another series that's covering all the main issues in apologetics. And so when someone converts, the idea will be, okay, whatever else if you have access to a church, great. If you don't worry about it. But make sure you get these foundations down, learn your basic apologetics and learn the basic doctrines of Christianity. But even after that, there has to be sort of an online church for them. You know what I mean? Like to where they can have, because again, some people just are in a bad area where they do not have a lot of freedom. And so we want to help them as much as possible. So that's the idea. But I'm one guy so far. It's good that I have some people coming alongside me who can help out with various things. But this stuff's gonna take a while. And one final comment. Michelle Marie said, "Congratulations, David. 100 million views is an awesome feat for a regular person, but maybe it is easier for someone like you who is the new improved human 2.0. Keep up the good work." She's referring to my atheist days when I thought I was a more advanced human being because I didn't have emotions. All right, so Sean, any final thoughts before we close out? Take as long as you want or as short as you want. Anything you want to say to everyone here?
Hey, thank you guys, first of all, for showing up, tuning in, and listening to this old guy speak. We do have a Patreon page, but I don't want to sound tone deaf. Okay, so if you guys don't have the ability to support,
oh my goodness, what a jerk! You're sitting here asking people for money in the midst of a quarantine when everyone's lost their job. You sick,
but I was
sick person.
Thanks, Dave. What I was going to say is, after all of that, when it bounces back, you can check it out, because what we do there, I wish I could just take everyone over. We actually teach weekly, privately, for Christians. We have not a discipleship program, but I have a couple different courses, including biblical interpretation and other things that we do. Right now we're doing philosophy for apologetics and whatnot, so for our patrons. But we have to do that on another platform, which costs money. You get the idea. Anyway, not something anyone needs to do right now. I'm not starving. My kids eat well, so... But yeah, and thank you for supporting David and what you guys do. I appreciate it, because when you support him, John, all of these ministries, it really helps them to be able to get the word out, and that's necessary. Yeah,
and guys, I'll just say this: not for myself, but for everyone out there who's trying to do a lot of work on YouTube. I believe that there needs to be massively more work being done, just given the number of people you can reach by making a video. And the idea that, if you go speak somewhere and you speak to 100 people, then, great, 100 people heard that, and it could be a powerful message and it can impact people. You spend a lot of time crafting an awesome video. That video's there forever, right? That video is
exactly
it's there. It can reach people. It has the power to reach people around the world. People in countries around the world are going to be watching it, and guess what? They're going to be watching it next year and the year after and the year after, and they could still be watching it 20 years from now. And so this is amazing opportunity. I think Christians are way further behind the times than we need to be. We need a lot of people doing nothing but cranking out YouTube videos. But as of right now, there aren't a lot. There's me and a couple others. There's me and a handful of others who actually have been able to go, just be full-time YouTube apologists. So when you see someone coming along, like like Sean, like John McCrae, like a lot of these other guys who are have been building up their channels. I've said it before. I'll say it again. If you are struggling, and $5 is a lot of money, do not support us. Do not. He just said it. He just said it. He's not starving. I'm not starving. So if money's an issue, do not support us. Do not support us. But I also know that a lot of people are fine, and they're not struggling. So when you see someone come along and they tell you, hey, I've got a Patreon, I'm trying to get on there. No problem. No, $5 or something like that is not a huge issue to a lot of people. But guess what? That adds up when you start. I'm talking from experience here. When you start making lots of videos and people are kicking in $5-10 a month, but you have hundreds of people doing it, all of a sudden you're full time because lots of people were just kicking in $2, $5, $10. So again, I'm not talking about myself right now. I'm good. I'm talking about the new guys who are coming along. When you see them put up a page, if you are not struggling and if you like what they do and if you'd like to support them and you're thinking, oh, but I can't support them a lot, you don't have to support them a lot. $1, $2, $5, all that adds up.
And if you can't watch the videos, come over to our channel, sub. That will help us out tremendously, guys. If you go to David's channel and you start watching one of his videos and you go, I'll come back and watch this later. Man, let it play in the background. It'll help his channel. Trust me. I'm not saying don't watch it if you don't like it, but I'm saying if you like it, let it play. Those kinds of things will help. So if you don't have the finances, watch the videos. That really helps us, believe it or not.
Yeah, and guys, that's massive. When you like it, when you see a video and you like it, and you share it, and you comment it, and you comment on it, all those things, that sends a message to the YouTube algorithm that people like this video, and it makes the algorithm more inclined to send that video out. So everyone can help out. With that said, if you don't like Sean, don't pay any attention to him. But if you do, if you do like him, you're interested in what he's saying, you're interested in what he's doing, definitely subscribe. Definitely subscribe. And for those of you who can, be sure to support him. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I believe I'm back tomorrow because, again, everyone's locked up. I believe I'm back tomorrow with Anthony Rogers and Vocab Malone, both of whom are Reformed, and they have requested the opportunity to give a presentation on presuppositional apologetics.
Ooh.
Now, I consider myself semi-presup, meaning I like some of it. Not the grand picture that lots of people who defend it have of it. But I'll give them the opportunity. They can defend. They can, because I like vocab. I like Anthony. So we'll see what they got to say. That'll be tomorrow. And oh, by the way, for those of you who requested when Hussein was on yesterday, you know that Hussein works with Zachariah Boutros. Some of you said, hey, David, can you see if you can get Zachariah Boutros on? Yes, next Thursday. Zachariah Boutros here.
Nice.
$60 million hit on his head, so he can. I've said before, man, that could fund all of our ministries, so we need to start thinking about it.
I shouldn't be laughing.
All right, everyone. Thanks to Sean for joining us, Sports Channel, and catch you all tomorrow.